Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to tonight's edition of Sisters of Legacy. As always, we are here. We are going to go ahead and run our intro, and we'll be right back. Hello, everyone. Hey, ladies, how you guys doing tonight?
We're good.
All right. So as usual, we have our wonderful ladies. We have Tangela Terrell
Hello.
and we have Shanetta McNair
Hey.
and Katrina Taylor, all the way from New
Hi.
York.
Oh Lord.
Thank you, ladies, for joining me. Uh-oh. What did I do? I don't know. Welcome you guys tonight. So our topic for tonight is yes. What do we say to our children? So I'm sure, just like I have a TV, most have televisions, and we've been seeing the news and everything that's happening in the world around us. Um, and it made me curious to the conversations that are being had in homes, if there's any conversation being had as well. I mean, at all. So, like, I'll say ahead of time, all of us, our kids are different ages. Tangela, I think your kids, or your oldest at least, is close to the age of my kids. And then Trina and Shanetta, you guys have older children. So I do realize that the conversations, won't be the same, due to the age of the children. But I just was curious, if there were any conversations being had in light of things that happened Wednesday, or just what's going on with the presidency in general, or the different elections. Um, so I wanted to ask you ladies and see, what was going on in your homes.
Well, for my little ones, they were annoyed with the ads for the Georgia Senate run. Every time one would come on, they'll say, "Oh, not again." And to the point, even my daughter was quoting it. She said, "Mommy, Kelly's for Kelly. Warnock is for us." And I'm like, I'm glad when this is over. But on Wednesday, it was funny that morning. I was telling my oldest daughter that I said, Zeta, you're witnessing history, for Georgia to elect our first Black senator. So, we were watching the polls come in and things like that. And then Wednesday took a sharp left. And we're watching these things unfold. And she's just kind of looking like, well, why are they doing that? Why are they so angry? What's
Right.
going on? And it's kind of hard to explain because I really don't fully understand outside of the fact that your candidate lost. I don't understand, what drove people to that level um, of terrorism. That's what I call it, of sheer terrorism. So it's I really don't know how to explain, what we're seeing, except for, we have to pray for everybody, and we know how, we're to act. It's funny, in her fourth grade class, they're just starting to discuss government and policies, and so we're virtual. So I'm like this, when the teacher's talking, the first thing her teacher says, "We are not talking about what's happening now. So let's get that clear." So I've been trying to stay engaged in what's happening, even in her school environment, her virtual school environment.
Right.
But
Oh,
it's a mess.
right. So like, today I had been throwing this topic around in my head like all week. And then today, this morning, my daughter, she came and she was like, Mommy, do you think this is inappropriate? And I'm like, what? So when I hear that word, now I'm looking like, what's inappropriate? So she was showing me in her school, she's fifth grade. So they're I guess now discussing the Jim Crow laws and that type of thing. So her teacher posed a question asking her or asking the class how they felt about the Jim Crow laws. And she wrote a response and she brought me the response. And so I'm reading and she's like, oh, what makes them think they have the right to tell it? And I was so surprised by her response because she's only 11. But she was like, do you think it's okay if I say that? I was like, is that really how you feel? Like she really articulated, like it's not their place to control us and tell us, what to do. And she said, yes, Mommy, that's how I feel. And I said, yes, then I think you should go ahead and submit your answer. And then I was like, you let me know what your teacher, what her response is to your answer. I was like, because I want to make sure that her response is acceptable, like that she don't make her feel like she's not entitled to her feelings. So, I was like, yeah, I've been trying to explain to my kids, and it was like almost kind of going down a rabbit hole. Because when I was watching some of the stuff on TV, the kids are home and they weren't even in school last week. So they in there watching with me, and I'm busting at the TV. And I'm like, oh my goodness, do you see this? And they like, what, Mommy? And they trying to be engaged and then, answering questions like one after the other. Like after you answer one, there was like a follow-up question. And I was trying so hard to answer them and not go too far because my oldest is only 12. So, his mind is still kind of limited, in some areas, and I don't want to push it to where I have him afraid, to be who he is. So like, I've been walking a fine line all week, but it is very frustrating and really hard to have to try to explain this, to our children. And luckily, his dad jumped in and he say, and he's able to say some things and kind of balance it out. But I do realize it is a task to have to explain this to our children. And I'm wondering if parents, really are trying to explain. Like, I was talking to Anthony and we talked about back when Rodney King happened. Like we was in high school when that happened. There was never no conversation at home about what we were seeing. Even when the riots and stuff happened, there was no conversation in my home, I'll say, about any of that. And I was thinking like, I want to make sure that I do different, for my kids. I want them to understand the world and the time that they're living in.
Yeah. I think for me, having our youngest turned 18 Friday. So he was, home, of course, when everything was happening. And we had already been talking to him like about the elections. We had had tons of conversations this summer with, everything that happened with the protests and just so many different things that have been happening here recently. We've had some conversations, but he happened to be, I guess, in our living room. He normally doesn't watch TV downstairs. He normally watches TV in his own room. Right. And he just so happened to be sitting in the living room watching Naruto, I think is the cartoon he watches, anime or whatever. It's not cartoons. I can't say that. Anime. I'm not supposed to call it cartoon. But he was watching it nonetheless. And my husband was like, no, turn that off, put it on CNN. You have to see this. This is history. And so it was kind of like that moment where he was told, you have to watch this. You need to see what's going on. You need to understand this. And he, you know, he sat and he watched, and he even like again, like we've all, I think, been completely stressed out with the political commercials in the last, I don't even know how, I feel like it's been like 8 years, but it's only been a couple of months. But I'm like, I'm so tired of those commercials. But he would come in and even just see stuff on TV and just shake his head and kind of walk out. And even up through earlier today, I had it on the news, and he looked at the headline. The sound had not even come on. The TV was on, but the sound bar had not clicked in yet. And he just saw the news feed line that was going across the screen. And he was like, that is so ridiculous. And I don't even know what it said, but when I looked up, they were talking about current, you know, political events. And he was like, it's just so ridiculous. So we've been having those conversations, but I can remember when they were smaller. And this is the biggest one. Like, we've always talked to our kids about what's going on and trying to keep them aware of what's happening around them, even though they don't feel it, because we kind of protect them and keep them away from certain things. But I can remember back when Trayvon Martin was killed.
Right.
And they were small at that time. They were younger. And we were heading out for a road trip. And I feel like we talked about it the entire car ride. I don't even remember where we were going or what, you know, like why we were traveling or whatever, but we were headed out. And I remember talking about it for a very long time on the road and kind of explaining different things to them and just kind of explaining to them what we expect from them and what they have the right to do. But it's hard. It's hard to have those conversations and then to see their feelings and to have to kind of let them know that they're good enough and let them know that this isn't okay and this isn't acceptable, but this is the world we live in and this is what's happening. So you have to also, while you know you don't deserve that, you have to be mindful and you have to be aware. Explain it to your son, and it just felt different. I've explained it to my daughter, but explain it to your son that if he gets pulled over, this is how you behave when you get pulled over so that it doesn't turn into something else. Having to explain to your son that I can buy you a hoodie, but I don't think I want you to wear it when you're out and you're not with me. Having to explain to him how to speak to people and how to talk to people. The sheer panic that you get when they call you and say, I got pulled over. Like, I'm sitting here and the police officer's on the way to the car. Like, just those moments is, it's heart-wrenching. Like, it's hard. And it's enough to drive a person crazy, but you just kind of have to really teach them, show them, and make them aware. And I know for me, we live, I wouldn't say really in a protected area, but my kids don't experience as much, I think, as they would if we were kind of more in an urban area. We're in the suburbs. So it's a little different, but at the same time, it still makes you worry in different kind of ways. Because right around the corner, probably in my same neighborhood, somebody's flying a Confederate flag. So that concerns me more so than the police sometimes. So it's like you don't know whether the concern is going to be whether or not they're going to get the good cop or the bad cop, or whether the concern is whether or not they're going to get the good neighbor or the bad neighbor.
Right.
So along with teaching them what's going on in politics and what's going on around us with politics, we got to teach them to kind of keep their head on a swivel in the neighborhood too. And that's it's the reality that we live in, and it's unfortunate, but it's hard conversations that you have to have as early as understanding. The same way we teach them about, church, and we teach them about loving the Lord, we have to teach our kids about how to survive in the times that we live in.
Amen. Trina.
My kids are 16 and 20, and so all along during the whole political climate, even over the summer with Black Lives Matter, they actually went out and protested themselves. And so we've always had an ongoing, anytime something happens, we're discussing it, we're talking about it, everything that's going on. And but I do think sometimes, like when it comes, like Shanetta was saying, when it comes to my son, I'm like, what time who you riding with? Like, I'm real concerned about, he was going out with his friend. I went out to the car. I said, listen, turn that music down. Nobody's speeding. Put your seatbelt on. I'm like yelling to his friend. He's like, okay, Miss Taylor. I'm like, listen, I don't want none,
Right.
we got to be on the straight and narrow. And, he plays football, and our community, his school is diverse. His football team is very diverse. So he's hanging out with, different kids of different races or whatever. But, I told him, I said, listen, when you're in the car, you have to be mindful, if you are pulled over, tell your friend, listen, don't be acting out like you ain't in the car.
Right.
If you normally talk back to the cop, or if you normally want to say, I pay your, no, don't do that when I'm in the car. You know what I mean? Like, everybody got to roll a certain way, and unfortunately, this is the conversation I have to have with him. You can't act like you're not a young Black man,
Right.
regardless of who you're hanging out with, regardless of who your teammates are. You have to understand who you are, and you're not going to be viewed as, oh, he's hanging out with with his football teammates. You're just still going to be the Black boy that's in the car.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, unfortunately, this is something that, I tell them you have to be mindful, and, it is what it is. And with regard, it's so funny though, because when everything was happening, like, I think my sister texted me, and I still had the younger kids with me. So I put the laptop on and I was watching it, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm just reacting. So the little kids, they're 2 and 4, the 4-year-olds like, Miss Trina, what's going on? What's happening? I was like, just some bad people are being bad on the TV, and Miss Trina is mad. He's like, what's, I had to shut it down, but I wanted to see what was happening, but they're, way too young to even,
Right.
even give them a glimpse. So, but he was concerned though, because he, I usually don't react to anything or whatever. And he was just like, what happened, Miss Trina? And I'm like, nothing. Everything's fine. Just some people are being bad on the computer. That's it.
Yeah, it's like I've often looked back at, like the 60s and different things that happened back then, and growing up, and even, into maybe the last 6 years, I never thought that I would see, those type of things in my lifetime.
Yeah.
So like, it's kind of like you have to, push down your own shock and fear. You got to go straight into, mommy mode, or straight into, mama bear protecting, and it's a very different feeling. Like, initially you're going to protect your kids. That's a part of who you are. You're like, these are mine and nobody mess with mine. But when you see stuff that's on such a larger scale and so much more detrimental, like sometimes I'm like, I'm not even, my protection is not adequate enough.
Yeah.
I can't go to school with you. I can't protect, you from your teacher who might say something crazy. Yeah, afterwards, she's gonna have to deal with me. But in that moment, she kind of has gotten away with it. And like sometimes those things, like make me really, I don't know, fearful, but yeah, I guess it does like scare me. I don't want my kids to be damaged. Michelle said, unfortunately, even when you're young men get in their 20s, you still need to have a conversation. I've had a conversation with my son, but when he went to college, I had to revisit things that he had been taught. Right.
Yeah,
it's like, initially being a parent, you're always teaching anyway, regardless of their age, regardless of where they are or what they're doing. You're always teaching, but it's like now you got this whole big other issue, and you can't, and you got to teach it in such a sensitive manner, because you can't say, well, those people are bad, like that whole group, because then I feel like we kind of become like them. Like we're teaching them now, how they teach their kids that, all people of color are this one thing. So you're kind of like you're teaching, you're teaching them and protecting them with one foot in the air, and you're holding 5 plates and trying to balance everything. That's kind of how I feel. Like, I feel like I'm teaching them like that, with a banana peel under the one good foot that I got there. So, it's like at any moment, it could all go wrong.
Yeah. I've kept on, I think, my teacher hat sometimes when I come home and I'm talking to my kids. When I'm at work, we have to be kind of like neutral is what they would call it. You're like, they even gave us like a whole statement before the election of what we could say versus what we couldn't say in the school with regard to the upcoming election before November. And there are times where when I'm having conversations with my own kids, I try to kind of remain on that neutral level and give them the points of this side and the points of that side, and then let them decide who's right, who's wrong. So that way, like, I can hear what your opinion is, and you tell me what you think. And when you tell me what you think, I'm going to tell you what I think. And we're going to have a healthy debate. If there's a debate, we're going to have a healthy conversation about it, so that when you do go out in the world and encounter people who view things differently than you, you know how to talk to them. You know what to say, you know what angles to come from, and then you know when to walk away, even in those conversations. And I think that's what a lot of people that are kind of on the far ends of some of these political divides, that's what they miss. They miss that debate lesson where you learn how to have healthy debates and then walk away and everybody's okay with it. Like, they missed a whole lot of lessons in school, clearly. But like we missed all the kindergarten lesson, all the preschool lessons of learning how to share and take turns and all that kind of stuff. They missed all those lessons, apparently. Like, you don't break things that don't belong to you,
And Shanetta, I love that approach, because I think a lot of times even the kids will automatically follow the thoughts and the ideology of their parents. But even, as we're, watching this whole political season, I didn't want to be guilty of inflicting, our personal stance, like, okay, now this is what, we believe, because of course we know better, but just kind of hearing some of the things that, my kids was picking up, about just even in the way they the different candidates, even back to November, how the candidates presented themselves. They made observations that I didn't even have to, tell them. They'll tell mommy, when this happened, or when this person comes on, he's saying like this, so I think that's healthy, and that prevents a lot of this generational curses of hatred and division. Because a lot of times you just mad because, your grandmama, granddaddy, everybody in your family feels this way towards this group of people. But in reality, you don't have that feeling. But because, to get along with your family, we're just going to adopt this way of thinking. So I like that thought process.
Yeah.
And I think it's important what you were saying, Samantha, about Alexis writing her essay, for them to be able to, express how they're feeling, and for that to be accepted. You know what I'm saying? Because I remember I was in college and I wrote this this paper about genocide, and I followed all the directions, and I backed it up. I had my sources and everything, but my professor, because he didn't agree with that position, he gave me a bad grade. And I was like, but wait a minute. What I did was I stated my position and I backed it up. So I don't understand. He said that I had a bad outlook on my race and all this. I said, that don't have nothing to do with it. You don't have to agree with what I'm saying.
Right.
I have backed it up, so I should get a good grade. He wouldn't change my grade. He told me I could write my paper over. I was like, no, I'm not writing it over. And then, I could have taken it up and all this stuff. I was like, you know what? He gave me a passing grade, but it wasn't a good grade. And I was like, you know what? I'm not changing it. And I'm going to take this stand and I'll take this bad grade. But I'll tell you right now, and I felt so good because I found, I'm quiet. I wasn't going to stand up for, but I said, I'm going to stand up for myself at this because I believe in this and I believe in what I wrote. And, you don't have to change my grade, but I'm going to tell you, this is exactly what's happening in the world.
Right.
And I walked out of there upset and shaking, and you finally stand up for yourself and you're upset and shaking or whatever. But I had to take that stand at that point because you'll have people, a professor, a person in authority, try to tell you what you're saying is incorrect. You know what I'm saying? Or from their position of privilege, they don't understand, or they pretend not to understand. So, like you were saying, when they go to school, they need to be able to express themselves, and as parents, we have to make sure that that the teacher's opinion is not affecting the kids' grades, and that's how we have to be in there as parents. Be like, wait a minute, hold on.
Yeah,
She did the assignment here. She did the assignment, followed every direction. Let's go. What we about to do?
And I've been real careful, been trying to be real careful with her, as opposed, to telling her, oh, well, they're bad people. Like, I've just been pushing her to take pride in who she is and who we are as a people. Like, listen, do you know that Black women are fabulous? Like, we even came up with this song that me and her sing about how fabulous we are. And I have her, doing her neck. Because, I want her to understand that, who you are is enough. I don't care what happens, what other people say, what other people think. It does not matter. You know that you're fabulous and you can do this and you can do that. And, I've kind of taken that approach because, going down they're bad or they're this or they're that. I feel like because she is so young, she's only 11. So it's like, I don't want to instill that vile kind of thing in her. I want her to be able to remain sweet, but also have an unshakable pride in who she is.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely can't allow teachers pushing their opinions. Right.
And that happened to us before we moved to public school. We were in my oldest daughter was in a private school during the 2016 election. So Zeta was in kindergarten at the time, and she comes home and says, oh, CNN was on, and she says, yeah, mommy, our whole class want Trump to win. I said, y'all want what?
Right.
What do you mean? And she starts to spew this stuff. And I said, oh my God. And it took everything I had not to call the teacher that night. So I sent her an email to tell her what my daughter was saying. She said, oh yeah, Zeta brought that up in class. No, she did not. She's 5 years old. She doesn't know anything about any of the political candidates. And I would appreciate if you did not discuss that in her presence. And I was listening to what you're saying, Shanetta. That's probably why they were free to do it, because it was a smaller Christian private school.
Mm-hmm.
And I say Christian in air quotes. Well, yeah.
I think that, and even when you have the schools that take a stance and say, okay, we don't want to sway kids in either direction, you still have teachers that because you're not being monitored all the time.
Right.
So you're going to still have teachers who their personal beliefs and their personal opinions are going to seep through and come through. And as a parent, you have to be watchful of that, because that's all the time, not just during political seasons, but it's all the time where you have teachers and what they believe and their faith system, their value system that might be different from what we're trying to teach our own kids. It bleeds through in what they do. And when that's happening, you have to be mindful, because you have to make sure that you're giving your kids what you know they need to have. a lot of times people trust, I guess, too much the school system to do it all for them. And that's where we're missing it. As parents, we have to stay involved and talk to our kids about politics, about inequalities, about injustice, all kinds of things. And we have to teach them that there are bad people in this world. There are good people. There hopefully more you'll come across more good people than you will bad. But there are some bad people. There are some people that mean you no good. There are some people that want to hurt you. And let me tell you how you handle those situations. And I think everything is based on their age and based on what's appropriate for where that child is at that particular time. No, you don't want to just throw in their head, everybody hates you, everybody's mean, everybody's this.
Right.
But you definitely have to give them enough to be balanced to where they can go out and they can feel like they can stand on their own with what they've learned and with what they know. And even sometimes with my kids, as they're getting older, I find I have one that likes healthy debate. Like he truly if he actually went and watched the game last night and all of his friends were saying that Alabama was going to win. And just because they said Alabama was going to win, he said Ohio was going to win. Just because he likes to debate. It's not because he really didn't want Alabama to win. It was seriously because he just loves to debate stuff with people. So if you're on one side of the fence, he's going to research and find a way to kind of pull out all those other points to prove, the other side of it, even if he doesn't believe it. I actually have 2 kids like that now that I think about it. I don't know. I'm going to have to figure out where they get that from. But they learn how to create that balance of being able to communicate and articulate what you are thinking, even if it's different from other people.
I think that's one of the things I admire about this generation. They're not do as I say it and not as I do. They're going to ask why a million times. They're going to research. They're not going to go with the status quo. And I think that's why you have a lot of younger people, just like your kids, Trina, who were involved in recent protests, who are I even remember, I think it was some schools in California who did a walkout because of the whole immigration policies that was coming out. You have a lot more young people who are engaged in social rights and activism more so than just from my optics. I may have missed something, but I know activism wasn't on my mind, on my radar when I was in high school. But in this climate, I really admire that they aren't led by, even in some of their own families. I've seen cases where kids are ostracized by their families because they don't believe in the same way that they believe, if it endangers or it disenfranchises another group of people. So I admire that in these kids these days.
I think my hat goes off to Trina for even letting her kids go out and protest. Mine wanted to, and I was so terrified. I was like, no, you're not going downtown. You're not going anywhere. And even when they had it in our local area, they had smaller protests. I was still like, no, you can't go. So I think my hat goes off to you because I was terrified. And I've always said that, I'm one that I have very strong views and opinions, but I'm not one that will go out and protest. So it's not something that I've ever showed to my kids. It's not something that we've ever, done. But all summer long, when all that was happening, my husband kept saying how he wanted to do more and how he wanted to go. And for me, I was just I was completely just stunned at watching everything. And I was like, we're going to watch 11 Alive right here from the comfort of our own couch. And we're going to support, right here. But I don't know that I can go out there, and I don't want y'all out there. So my son was a little annoyed with me one day when I told him he couldn't go. So my hat goes off to you, Trina, for that.
I'll just say that when they went, my daughter's best friend, her dad went out with them. So they weren't, there was an adult there. They had a plan. If we, this is what we're going to do. If anything pops off, this is our plan. How we're going to get together. We're going to go. So I felt okay with them going out. Believe me, my mother, oh no, they don't need to go.
That's me. I would have been sitting right there, amen in your mouth.
Oh no. And I actually went to a protest, but I kind of fell into one because I came out to Stop and Shop and they were protesting at the end of the corner. I was like, oh well, I done put my
What y'all
groceries
doing?
in the car. Let me see what's going on over here. So I went out there and I was like, all right, here we go. So I kind of fell into a protest, but it was a smaller one, but it was good. I was actually able to go to one, and I felt okay because I felt like it was a nice group of people there, but it wasn't too big and it wasn't too crazy. So, yeah.
I mean, I think it's a testament to your parenting, though, that the children even want to be out there, and be counted and be represented and have their voices heard. I mean, like you said, back when you were younger, protesting was the last thing on your mind. I know, like as a teenager, yeah, I wasn't protesting anybody, but it was also at a time where you really didn't have to. I mean, even with the Rodney King stuff, that was like, all the way over
there.
So like when I'm in New York, it's like I saw it, but in my mind, it didn't really affect me. I didn't see how that could affect me in that moment, just thinking back. But like now, like you were saying, the kids in a generation now, they're like, oh no, I'm black too. Like it doesn't matter, where it happens. And I think like that is a great, it's great that they can look and have that kind of forethought and that kind of understanding that the issue is just bigger than, that one person or that one state. Because like I said, at my age, yeah, it was like, oh, they beat him bad. No, and he was driving a Honda. Like I was focused on everything other than, cops beat this man. Like it really didn't resonate or mean a whole lot to me. And so, yeah, this generation is definitely different. They're connecting the dots and they're understanding that together we have a better chance, of making a difference. And I think like that's great, that your kids can see that at their ages. That means that you guys have been doing something right. You've taught them well. Somewhere something you said has, taken root and grew into something great. So you guys should feel some kind of pride, Shanetta, even though you ain't let them go out.
No way, you can't go.
Listen, I could. My kids are young, so but yeah, the thought of it probably would scare me too, because you'd be the one little random one that of course, as parents is my baby, no matter how big,
right? No matter how big,
right?
I was texting them though. Y'all good? Where y'all at? What y'all doing now? Y'all good? Y'all good?
Right, because you ready to drive the getaway car, pull up in a protest, get in, like
exactly.
That protection is always there. Oh, like I was saying, my mom, when all of it happened back in high school, she never said anything. She never had any conversation. I don't even know if she knew they was beating a man over the head, because her mind was probably like totally somewhere else. And I was, it made me think about who I am as a parent. And I was wondering, like, do you ever think about that, like your parents' parenting skills versus who you are and how you parent?
Yeah. I know from when Rodney King happened, I don't recall my parents ever really talking about that. Right. But I know when OJ Simpson and everything went down, they watched that whole trial. That was the worst summer ever. I was like, do we really have to keep watching this trial? Like, that was, so they were big on news, but I don't remember there ever being conversations about this is what you do, this is how you handle that. I don't think I ever remember being told if you get pulled over, this is, how you handle. And I don't know if it was because, they figured it wasn't that much to worry about because I was a girl, or if that they just never thought that was something that we really needed to talk about at that time. But I feel like it's a conversation that I've always had with my kids. And I don't know. I know why, because I've kind of observed things that are going on, but I don't know if it's because the climate did feel different when we were younger, that it didn't feel like it needed to be that big of conversations, because maybe in their time they spent so much time talking about it that they felt like, now let's not for a while. And that maybe, we just don't want to do this because maybe they spent too much time talking about, injustice and how people were being treated when they were younger. I'm not sure. It's a question that I think I might have to ask. Mom, Dad, why didn't y'all talk to me about this?
I think in my household there was always the pointing out of the difference and in race and how we're treated, how they're treated. So that was always, it wasn't so much of a protest, but you see how that is, and you see how you gotta when you go to school, you gotta do the best because they're gonna get this and you're not gonna get this. And it was always that comparison of how you got to be better, and you know what I'm saying. So it was always that comparison of how we're treated, how they're treated. But I think one of the things that's different now is, number one, we're seeing so much more of it. We heard about it, but we see it because everybody's got a camera. So it's in our faces so much more. And so it's in our faces so much more. And we're debunking that narrative that, they must have done something wrong for the cops to have done this.
Right.
We're not accepting that anymore. And I think that is what's driving it. It's like we used to accept that because media would, of course, demonize the person right away. And, we would hear, Pookie down the street, he went to jail, he got beat up. And we'd be like, well, what did he do? What did he do? Instead of saying the cop just beat him up. You know what I'm saying? Right. And he would be saying that, but we didn't always believe it because, he must have did something wrong. But now we're debunking that myth. It's the cops of police brutality. It's happening. It's been happening. And now we've got the proof because everybody's got a camera on you and you can't hide anymore. We're no longer just waiting for somebody to come out somebody to come out of the woodwork and confess and say and be a whistleblower. We don't need that anymore. Everybody's got your camera and it's showing you up. And so, and I think that's really what has ignited so much of this is that we can see you can't lie about it no more. And the fact that it still doesn't make a difference. You're still not being convicted. Even with the whole camera. That's the fuel right there,
Yeah. Cameras do. I guess you're right. It is the time that we live in. It's like it's almost, what? Oh, we're forced to have, it's almost like neglect as a parent if you don't have these conversations. You don't, equip your children. It's kind of like sending them into the lion's den, a fresh piece of meat. Yeah. So it's kind of like we are definitely in a time where we have to have the conversations, and unfortunately we've seen too many incidences of where people haven't had the proper conversations with their children. People haven't discussed this in their homes. And I wonder if that's because folks don't know how to broach the topic. They don't know where to start.
It's crazy. I think it's definitely hard to have conversations, but there are so many means of getting and communicating the information to your kids where you can open up conversations. I said, and the movie is a little old, but I'm a person that I like to read the book and then I want to watch the movie. But I got the book. Oh God, the title just left me. But it was one that was turned into a movie, and it's about the girl. She was with her friend when he got shot. The Hate You Give. Yes. The Hate You Give. So I read the book I guess during the Thanksgiving break, I think is when I read it. And I read the book in like a day or like 2 days, maybe. Like I got through the book really fast.
Hold on 1 second. Anthony Walker, did you hear that? She read the book in a day and a half. But go ahead, you can finish.
I read the book and then I was like, okay, I'm ready to watch the movie. Like I was, I was ready and we watched the movie but it sparked conversation. So there are opportunities even you can find a movie with your kids to say, okay, let's sit down, let's read this together, let's sit down, let's watch this movie together, let's talk about it. What do you think? What do you think they should have done? What do you think they need to be? Pause the movie. Like we have all this stuff now. You can pause your movie and pick it back up. Pause the movie and have a conversation. Because it gives you talking points that you don't have to come up with on your own. It helps you to and it can go in a different direction, but there are ways and so many methods, but we have to have more conversations with our kids. We have to kind of put our kids in a position where they know what's happening around them, even when they're young, because that gives us, more, it gives us those chances to really put in their minds what they need to know. So yes, teachable moments, anything that is going to provide an opportunity where we can teach. You use it. When you hear something on the radio, when you see something on the news, use those moments to talk to these babies, because it's too many of them that's out here oblivious to what's going on, and they just living their little lives and they have no clue that they're about to walk into traffic and they don't know what's coming at them. And we have to get them ready.
But my kids on social media so much, I'll tag them in something or I'll tag them in a meme and I'll be like, what y'all think about this?
Yeah.
Did you see that? And then here go the conversation,
Yeah.
So yeah, use social media. I mean, if they're of that age and they're into it, let's go from there. Use that as well.
Yeah.
I have to say, I find myself, we can go in a grocery store, I'll see a kid, the mother say whatever, and they, and I'm like, you see that? See that behavior right there? Let me see what that leads to. Like I do that a lot with my kids. What that leads to, is an unruly person that grow up, become an unruly adult, and then they climbing up the side of a building. Listen, I be connecting dots, everywhere. Like my kids are like, "Mommy, really?" I'm like, "Yes, it starts." As a child, when your behavior goes unchecked, it just gets worse. And so I've been like a dot connecting nut. Like soon as I see something, I'm like, "See that? This is not what you do. This is not how we behave." Like social media, my kids stay over my shoulder. And when you're scrolling through Instagram, you're likely to
see
anything. And I find myself, telling my daughter, "Look, if I catch you bent over in front of a camera somewhere, trying to like," I'm serious, like all of these things come into play. And so at 11, true. Moments, I'm always teaching her, like, let people hear you coming, not see you coming. Let people be attracted to your brain, to what you say, to who you are, rather than because you have had your tail all over somebody's screen. I mean, like, it's all of these things matter. Like, when you're raising your children, what's going on in the world, who you don't want them to be, like you just assume, oh, well, I taught them this, and you never tell them what they shouldn't be, or how they shouldn't be. You just expect them to know. Like, it all matters. You have to have conversations. I mean, I know, like I said, in my house, the conversations was more like, do as I say. It's like, be saved, read the Bible, don't be sinning. Like, my mom, she became, she was hardcore. Whatever Robert L. said, those was the rules in my house. So what the pastor said, it was like she brought the rules home. You heard pastor say you can't go to the movies. So those was a lot of the lessons, that I got in my house. It wasn't a whole lot of, leeway. Just don't do it. I purposely try to have conversation with my children and explain to them why these things shouldn't happen and what some of these things can lead to.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a news watcher, so my kids they walk in on me a lot, just watching and I don't know. I don't know when I turned into this person either. Like I literally get up in the morning and I turn the news on, and I walk in from work in the evening and I turn the news on. And then I watch other stuff maybe in between or, do other random things. And before I go to bed, I turn the news back on. I don't even know when I became that person, but I literally do it so they hear stuff all the time.
Yeah.
And even before my daughter went to school, it was like a bunch of stories about different things happening with college girls and situations with their roommates and girls getting killed by their roommates and just all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, do you see this? Do you see what's going on? And I can remember once something happened with something on the news with a young girl, and my sister, her daughter was maybe 12 at the time, and she was like, let me tell you, we've been talking about every single one of these articles. We've been talking about everything that's been coming up, and I've been making her read the articles and look in the newspaper and do this and keep up with it because I want her to know. And I was like, yeah, but she's not going anywhere. She literally doesn't leave the house unless she's leaving with you. And I was like, I need to have more of these conversations with this kid. I'm about to send off to college. So it was just kind of at different ages, you kind of have to really give them what's relevant to them and what you see that's going on in the world related to them. And that was, for that time, I was trying to make sure, and I'm so grateful my daughter ended up rooming with childhood friends. So it was perfect. I don't think y'all are crazy and I don't think y'all will kill my daughter. So, we're good. And if so, I know where your mama lives. So
right. I know where to find y'all.
Right.
Perfect. Well, yeah. I mean, so the hope is, to anybody that's watching or if you're watching the replay, that this will help you to engage in more conversation in your home, with your kids, because even though, kids probably, kind of get tired of hearing your voice, that's kind of the point. You need them to be tired of hearing your voice. You don't just want to send them out, and then they'll be turning to everybody else's voice. They'll get direction from other people. Explanation seems to give them analytical skills. I was raised also with the do nots, right? I think the do not share a stirring hand, but help keep them closer to God. We're just going to go with that. I agree, Jacqueline. I will say, I needed a lot of do nots as a teenager, because it helped me I knew where the line was, but there's a lot of times I got real close to it because, I know the do not, but I got as close to that do not as I could. And I think, maybe with a little more explanation behind some of them do nots, I probably wouldn't have got as close. I mean, thank God, I didn't go all the way left and I had some good sense to stay away from some things, but I want to equip my daughter even the more. I always tell her, I don't want you to do as good as I did. I want you to do better than I ever did. I want you to go further. She's like, Mommy, did you ever do? It doesn't matter if I did this when I was 11. Are they offering you this opportunity? Do you want to do it? Can you do? I try to teach her that. Don't worry about it. I want you to go further. I want you to do way better. And, all of those things require conversation. Our kids need to hear our voice. Our kids need our directions, even when they don't want it. You get older, your parents say, oh, you're smelling yourself, because you think And I guess all kids probably get to that stage where, you think you know a little bit, but that's when you need to start talking even more.
Yeah.
You got to talk more, talk louder, because they're ours and they need us, even when they don't know that they need us. So, it's our job as parents to have the conversations. So hopefully, we said something that can spark a conversation, give you an idea. Like people said, there's books, there's movies, even there's memes on Facebook. There's all sorts of ways to, have the conversations or send a text. However you need to communicate, don't miss opportunity. And anytime you learn something new, share it with your children. Because this world that you're living in, this is the world they're going to be out in tomorrow. So, share as much as possible with the life lessons and your experiences, even the ones that you wish you didn't experience. Those are definitely the ones that you need to share. So thank you guys for tuning in this Tuesday. Thank you for hanging out with us, for watching, for the comments, for the input. We appreciate you guys so much, and we will see you next Tuesday.